in the series on Pasi Anfas, which is to say, the observation of the breath. And we've come to this lesson. Color and sound. Breath in reality is light, but when it shoots forth its rays, according to the direction of the rays and the capacity which takes this light, the colors manifest. Form and color both depend upon the direction the light takes and upon the degree of light. Nothing on earth is meaningless. Every occurrence has its meaning, and every moment has its purpose. Even the colors that manifest in the light of the breath have their meaning, which coincides with the moment and the conditions then. There are attempts being made to take photographs of thoughts and feelings, and some have even attempted to photograph the spirits. It is difficult to say how far this attempt can be successful. No doubt it gives a great scope to falsehood. If there is any means of seeing a spirit, a form from the inner world, it is only breath. That in the light of breath a form from the inner world can manifest as a picture from the magic lantern. The picture actually is in the lantern, and it is the reflection of that picture which we see. Those who can see the form of the dead see the reflection before them manifested in the light of their own breath, the real form being still in the inner world. For it is the breath which connects the inner world with the outer world, just as the light thrown from the magic lantern falls upon the curtain. There are many who believe that there is a color or a note which belongs to a particular person. And this question gives no doubt a great scope for confusion and puzzle. Many people are anxious to know what note really belongs to them or what color is their special color. In point of fact, this question can be looked at from two different points of view. One symbolical and the other metaphysical. From the symbolical point of view, every person is, so to speak, tuned to a certain pitch in that person's particular evolution. And that person stands with another person, just as C on the piano may stand with G or E or A. This shows the reason why a person can get on with a certain person harmoniously and with another inharmoniously. It is not the fault of the G or the F on the piano that they sound inharmonious together. It is the combination which causes inharmony. It is not always the note which is inharmonious. It is a wrong combination which makes it so. Spiritual perfection makes one the keynote in which is harmony with all notes. And even that perfection shown in the world by Christ, caused his crucifixion. Metaphysically, this question can be explained that there is a certain degree of life in a person which can be distinguished by that person's breath. And that degree shows itself to the seer in color and sound. Those who have not reached the degree of that power which perceives the tone and color of breath can perceive it by the voice and expression of the person. There's so much in these few paragraphs. Murshid begins by saying how breath is light itself. And of course, Murshid is speaking here not of breath as the substance of the air we breathe, but breath as the life field itself. And says that this is luminous, and that is the light that functions in all of our senses. And the same light, when passing from the unmanifest state into the manifest state, more and more takes on the conditions of manifestation, and according to the angle of its passage and the conditions through which it passes, it takes on certain characteristics. And so, color and sound arise from the primal energy. And the variation of colors and sounds bespeaks the diversity of conditions as light passes into the physical plane and ultimately materializes this manifest universe. But if one would step back from the surface, as it were, of this universe, one would more and more perceive this same universe dissolved into frequencies, into tones, into vibrations. And that's why in meditation, when you turn your senses inward, first you continue to see the impressions of what you have seen with open eyes, the faces of people you've met, or the scenes in the streets. Those impressions show themselves, but if you rise higher, then the forms dissolve, but still there is color and there is vibration. Now, if one would go higher still, one would move beyond the variation of tones and experience a perfect silence and perfect stillness. But to reach that silence, there's an interval between form and formlessness, and that interval is experienced through color and sound. Now Murshid speaks about the internal sensations as ones that the scientists of his day were interested in recording, and that endeavor indeed continues, and progress is being made to the point where it may not be surprising if one day soon our dreams at night are video recorded. The science is almost there. So there has always been and continues to be an interest in the, as it were, quantifying of inner phenomena. But Murshid says that ultimately there will always be a dimension to this inner phenomenon that can't be quantified, it can't be objectively, materially grasped, and instead it's better attended to directly, not through a representation, but through presence, immediate presence through the breath. And that is how one can most immediately and most authentically experience the inner life of each moment. So, going on to speak of how each person has tendencies of consciousness which promote certain colors, that to a certain extent we can say that a person has a particular color, or maybe a palette of colors, a range of colors. And one might become very curious about that. And so Murshid is suggesting a certain caution, because if one becomes overly preoccupied with phenomena, one will fail to address what is essential, which is the act of sheer witnessing, of presence on the breath, which actually brings to light all of these phenomena. But if one is interested in the phenomena themselves, and one is speculating and constantly puzzling over them, then one might fool oneself into coming to all kinds of conclusions. But those conclusions are very different from the experience of direct witnessing, which comes through stilling the mind and watching the breath and being aware. But Moshe does recognize that different personalities have different tones and notes and colors connected with them. Certain tones predominate in certain kinds of people, and this helps to explain why certain people don't get along. It's just because those two notes don't necessarily match very well. The same person might easily harmonize with someone else much better. And yet, it's possible for every human being to more and more become universal, and to be able to harmonize with people of all kinds, and as it were, to be capable of all colors. But then Moshe goes on to say, but even in those great beings, such as Christ, who attained perfection, even there, the nature of the world is such that inharmony will always have its say. And finally, Moshe concludes in saying that in the same way that someone who has keen outer senses, in encountering a person, can apprehend the state of that person by their expression, the expression in their eyes, the expression of their mouth, their gestures, and so forth. Someone who is attentive can see into that being and their state by noticing that. Someone whose inner senses are very well developed can sense the state even without access to the outer features, just by feeling the breath of that person. That the breath of the person will tell the meditator everything that is to be known.